This conference will now be recorded.
Hi everyone, good morning. Today I'm going to discuss about some of the new concepts um, related to OSB security. Okay, so before I enter into actual security concept, there are some dependent concepts as well. So one by one I will discuss. The first thing is how to create users in WebLogic server. Okay. So this is very simple process. See guys, we have a default user. When we configure the integration domain, we have a default user that is WebLogic. WebLogic is the user. Okay, we use it. We use this user to log in into Enterprise Manager, WebLogic console, Service Bus console. We use it, right? Okay, so not only WebLogic user, if we want additional users, we can configure the users in our WebLogic server. So for that, what you need to do, go to your WebLogic console. You must go to WebLogic console. Okay, this is WebLogic console. Here you can see an option called security realms. Go to the security realms. Okay, here go click on my realms. So here you can see a tab called users and groups. You see these are all the default users in your server. We have some users. Okay, you can create a new user as well, or you can delete an existing user. See, this is the WebLogic. WebLogic is the user we configured at the time of domain configuration. Hope you remember the integration domain configuration. Okay, so other than this, suppose I want a new user. Let me say I just clicked on new button. My username is WLAdmin. Username can be user defined, as you can give any username. Description, I'm just giving some description. Description is optional. Okay. And password, I will say password is welcome one. You can choose whatever password you want. Okay. So WL admin is the user, welcome one is the password. Let me say okay. Click on OK button. Okay, now you can see there is a new user configured. New user configured. This is not enough, guys. Now what we need to do, we need to give some permissions to this user. What kind of user? This user have all permissions or limited permissions, that we need to decide. Suppose just click on the newly created user, WL admin, or I will do one thing. So there are no permissions assigned to this user. Okay, let me try to log in by using this user. What will happen, we'll see. See, I'm in another browser, completely a different browser. Localhost 7101/console. Okay, I'm trying to log in into console with the new user WL admin, and the password is welcome1. Okay, just say login. See what it is saying? Permission denied. Permission denied. This user has no permissions. User is there, user exists, but the user don't have permissions. Okay. Now what I need to do? Let's go back to your WebLogic console. In the users and groups, click on the newly created user. Okay, go to groups tab. So here you can assign different groups. Okay, suppose I want to say administrator. This user I want to use as administrator. Okay, just choose that. Select the checkbox and shuffle it to choose, and that means now the user has administrator permissions. Save it. So administrator permission is he has most of the access. Okay, now what we need to do, go to the same console. Okay, login screen. So again, use the same user, www.admin, welcome one. Now you can see it must allow you to log in. Got it? It must allow you to log in. So because it has the admin permission, so it has all the rights. You can log in into localhost 7101/em, localhost service bus console. Okay, let's check whether your user got every access or not. login into Enterprise Manager. I'm trying to log in into Service Bus as well. Okay, you can see we logged in into Service Bus. I'm trying to log in into Enterprise Manager as well. You got it? You understand how to create a new user? Hope you all understand, right? It's very simple. Okay, let me create one more user. I will name it as integration user. Integration user. Welcome one. Okay, now this user, I want to give a group. Okay, you can give more than one group as well, guys, if you want. Administrator, integration administrator, integration developer. There are different roles for these groups. Okay, I'm not going in detail about these groups, but you can give multiple groups as well as the scope of the user. Okay, fine. So I just show you how to configure users, right? And with that user, you can access your WebLogic console, everything. I mean, Enterprise Manager, Service Bus console, everything you can access it. Any questions till now? How to create user? Is that clear, everyone?
Yes, sir. Clear.
It's very simple. You can configure n number of users. Username is always user defined. Username and password is always user defined. Mostly WebLogic administrators will take care, not the developer. But still, we want to do something. For that, I need this. Okay, we want to do an exercise. We want to do a concept. For that, I need this information. Okay, next thing. So the next step, I want to show you how to deploy 11G SOA project into 12C SOA server. Is it clear? My code, I have a 11G SOA project. Okay, so I just want to use it as is in 12C server. Yes, we can do that. Suppose if you see here, I have a SOA project. This one, card validation system. So this is a SOA project developed in 11G. I have the jar, SAR file, SOA SAR file, nothing but jar file. It is developed in 11G. If really required, we can directly deploy it into 12C server. Okay, it is allowed. But 12C jar, you cannot deploy into 11G server. Okay, always remember this. Okay, anyway, let me go to Enterprise Manager. This is Enterprise Manager. I'm in SOA Infra, you know, right? SOA Infra navigation. If you click on this, you will get the SOA Infra option. And then you can go to SOA Infrastructure. Here you can see SOA deployment and then deploy the jar. There is no difference. It may be 11G SOA jar or 12C SOA jar. There is no difference. We can deploy the jar in the same approach. Okay. Let me browse the jar file. This is the old process only, but I want to show you, and that gives you the confidence. Okay, it's a 11G project, 11G SOA jar deploying into 12C SOA server. Just say click next, and you can select the folder. You can select the folder. Click next. Next. Okay, that's it. So 11G project will be deployed into 12C server. It is possible. You don't need to do anything else. But guys, there are, if you have a complex service, lot of functions, lot of XSLTs, okay, lot of assign activities, lot of code is there. Okay, at that time, of course, even though it may be a huge service, you can deploy it into 12C server, no doubt. But if there are any deprecated functions, okay, from 11G to 12C, few functions were deprecated, few functions. Okay, so if your service contains that deprecated function, when you after you deploy the code into 12C server, that function will not work. Okay, generally we will see some projects like 11G code migration to 12C. Okay, so at that time, what they will do, they just simply deploy the code into 12C and they can test it in the test environments. They will test it and see everything working or not. Okay, it's a very simple process to migrate 11G to 12C, either SOA or OSB, anything. Okay, it's a very simple process. Done. So this is the deployment completed. Only problem will come when you deploy the 11G code into 12C server and that code contains deprecated functions, then you will see the issues. That deprecated function you need to replace with new functions. Okay, that's the only challenge we have in the migration. Right. So, okay. So SOA code I deployed into 12C server. Is it clear? It's from here, it is same. You can test it. You can test it. You can see the instances. Everything is same. Okay. Now, similarly, we can also deploy OSB code into OSB server, OSB jar into OSB server. Okay. How to 11G OSB service into 12C OSB server. Okay, so we can also deploy 11G OSB project into 12C OSB server. It is also the same approach. Generally, how we deploy the OSB jar, we go to SB console. We go to SB console. We create the session, right? Okay, for deployment. Okay, create the session, and then what we do? No session was specified. Okay, let's discard. Let me refresh the screen. Okay, so create the session, and then what we want to do, we want to deploy, import a jar file. This is the same approach. We saw this many times, right? In the previous sessions also we saw, if you click on this import button, you are able to browse a jar. That jar can be 11G OSB jar or 12C OSB jar, anything you can browse. Okay, but I don't want to do that as of now. I don't want to do that. I will do it later. But I just want to tell you, the deployment process will not change. Your OSB code, it may be 11G or 12C, you can deploy it into your as service bus console. Okay, any questions as of now? Any questions? No. Now what I want to show you is, I have an OSB jar, guys. I have one OSB jar. It's a OSB project developed in 11G. I want to open this code in my JDeveloper. Okay, this was developed in 11G Eclipse IDE, not JDeveloper IDE. But I want to open this in my 12C JDeveloper. It's very simple process. Let me show you. Go to your JDeveloper. Go to JDeveloper. You can see your OSB application is visible here, right? This is our OSB application. Just once click on it, then go to File, and you can import. So here you can see OSB service bus resources. Okay, say okay, and you need to browse the jar. Okay, click next. So where is the jar file? We can browse the jar file. It is on my desktop somewhere in a folder. Let me open the jar file. This is my OSB jar file. Click next. See, this jar file contains, these are the files. This jar file, test security Santosh project, contains these many files. Okay, of course, whatever it is, I mean, our intention is not, we don't worry about the files here. What we are trying is, it's a 11G code, we are trying to open it in 12C JDeveloper. Finish. If you click on finish button, you can observe a new OSB project under the application. Okay, done. You can see this. You can see a new OSB project. Save it. Okay, save it. You can see bunch of files are there. Anyway, we'll talk about them. Are we clear? So how to import 11G OSB code, which is in the form of a jar. I want to open that in my 12C JDeveloper. That's simple, very simple process. Now the code migrated as 12C code. It's a 11G jar. After you open it into 12C developer, it migrated as 12C code. No more. This is no more 11G code. This is 12C code. Okay. Right. This is about how to import OSB project into 12C developer. Of course, you can also without migrating. Okay, without migrating directly, you can deploy the jar into 12C or service bus console as well. That is also we can do. Okay, right. So this is about importing 11G code into 12C developer and 12C server. Okay, so now I want to talk about how to enable basic security in OSB proxy file. OSB proxy file. So we know that in SOA, if you have a SOA web service, we can enable security on SOA web service. We can, if you enable security on a SOA web service, we need to supply the user and password, right? Similarly, we can also enable security in a OSB project as well. So as of now, when we are testing an OSB service, we are not providing any security. Suppose if you see common arithmetic project. Okay, so here I have a proxy service. When you want to test this guy, you don't need to supply any security. Anyone have this visible endpoint? Anyone have this visible endpoint? Let me go to this. So http://localhost:7101 endpoint !visible. This is the concrete visible of the service, right? So whoever have this endpoint, whoever, okay. So if they have this endpoint, simply they can go to any browser, they can go to any SOAP UI tool or any other program. They can simply use this concrete visible and they can test this service, correct? Where is it? Something wrong. Add visible. Okay, let me test this in the service bus console, or you can test it in SOAP UI as well. Okay, SOAP UI also you can test the web service, right? Is it started? Okay, SOAP UI is getting starting. Wait for some time. Right, so we got the SOAP UI. So what is the project we are trying to test? Common arithmetic project, right? Common arithmetic project. Okay, I don't have this. Let me create it. So you can test this service without any security. What happened? Visible definitions. Oh, at the end, question mark West. Okay, now we can test this without any security. Let's see. I will give some data 10 and 20. Okay, so there is no security. Security we need to provide in the header part, right? I'm not using any security. I submitted the request. And I can see the response. But I want to enable security here. I want to enable security. So what we need to do, it's very simple configuration. If you go to your project, go to proxy file, the same edition proxy file. Okay, so go to transport details tab. Here you can see the authentication option. There is an option called authentication. Simply say basic. That's it. If you say basic, okay, now this service, this proxy service, this web service, we enabled the security. Let me deploy the code. So now what happened, if you test this service, this will not allow you to simply testing it. You need to provide the security information, that is user and password. Let me deploy the service. Okay, deployment finished. Now go to your SOAP UI. We tested, just now we tested this service, right? Let me test the same service again. Submit the request. See what it is saying. There is an error. There is an error. Unauthorized. Unauthorized. Because that service is a secured web service. It's a secured web service, and I'm testing it simply by providing the input. There is no header information. There is no header information. Okay. Right. So how to pass the header information? Earlier, I show you the syntax as well. Let me open the syntax if I have it somewhere. I must have somewhere. Let me check. You need to configure the header part. That's it. Okay. So this header security you need to supply. Let me copy the segment, code segment. Go to your current service which we are testing. So test the header part, replace the header part with the security. You need to provide the security elements, that is user and password, user and password. You can use any user. I mean, you can use the WebLogic user. We have total 3 users in hand right now. In my server, I have WebLogic user, WL admin, integration user. 3 users I have. Any user you can use. Let me use WL admin. Okay. And what is the password? Welcome one is the password. Okay. Right. So let me test the same service. Done. I submitted my request. Oh, is it not allowed? Okay, let me use WebLogic. What happened? Again failed. Okay, we'll do any syntax error or what. Let me test it from here. This header section, maybe it is something wrong or what, I will check. Okay, let me go to service bus, add PS, go to add PS. Okay, so here transport tab, you can give the user and password. Give the user and password in the transport tab, and here give some input data. Let's submit the request. We'll see. Okay. No, it's not showing the header part. Give me a second. So security enabled. Oh, it is not showing. We are testing the right one, right? Add PS only. That is not showing.
This conference will now be recorded.
So what I will do, looks like something wrong in this header part. I will share the exact one. I have a copy, but not in this machine handy with me. It's not handy with me. I will share the exact copy with you. Okay. So then if we place the proper header section here in the SOAP envelope, then you don't see this 401 error. Your service will accept the security part. Okay. We need to provide the proper syntax of header. Okay. I will share it, guys. Just give me some time. I don't want to stop here. Let me continue our discussion. Okay, so this is a very simple process to enable the security, the basic security in your OSB proxy. Simply go to your proxy file and go to transport details tab, and then select this basic. That's it. You can simply enable it. Okay. Now I want to discuss about another concept, which is called service account. Service account. Okay, so this service account is a security concept in OSB. See, in SOA we have CSF key. Do you remember CSF key? Okay, we configure CSF key in our WebLogic Enterprise Manager. Enterprise Manager, we can configure the CSF key which contains user and password, right? Similarly, in OSB we have something called service account. This service account, we have three types of service accounts. Three types of service accounts. Okay, so I will introduce one by one. Okay, for that I just prepared one diagram, one picture to make it and to make it clear for you. Let's go through the diagram and types of service accounts. Okay, if you see this diagram, observe carefully. There are so many things in this diagram. Let's go one by one. First, concentrate on the target. Okay, so the target server, the target server. Let's assume this is not SOA or OSB. This is something completely out of our Fusion middleware. Let's assume it's a target server. It can be Java, .NET, or anything. Okay, it's a application server. In this application server, there is a secured web service. We have a secured web service, and I named it as card validation system. Let's assume it's a secured web service. This web service deployed into our target server. This is simply a web service. I mean, anybody can communicate with this web service by using the concrete visual of the web service, but it is secured. It is secured, security enabled. So guys, irrespective of technology, irrespective of the server, if we have a web service, which is security enabled, okay, that means when you are testing that web service, you need to supply username and password in the SOAP header. In the input we have SOAP header, right? So in the SOAP header, you need to supply the username and password. Then only you can test this web service. Otherwise, you cannot test this web service, irrespective of technology. That may be SOA, that may be OSB, Java, .NET, whatever web service it is. If it is secured, if the security enabled in the web service, you need to supply the username and password in the input, and it must be in the SOAP header code segment. Okay, SOAP header XML segment. Clear? Okay, that is nothing but this. Let me open this. So in SOAP UI, it can be any technology program. It can be any technology program. Where it is. Okay, you have to supply the header part. You have to supply the header part. Is it clear? Okay, it can be any technology, not only SOA web service or OSB web service. Okay, but I will give you the exact syntax of it, but just wait for some time. So you are clear. Hope you are clear how to test any web service if the security enabled. So what my intention is, in this diagram, my target server contains one SOAP web service, secured SOAP web service. In the target server, there are two users configured. Santosh, integration user, Santosh, two users configured. Any questions? If you want to test this web service, either you need to use Santosh user or you need to use integration user. Okay, that server was configured in that way. We have a target server that contains two users. Is it clear? You forget about the technology, what they have. It can be any technology. Okay, we have a target server. Server contains two users, two different users, and there is a web service. If you want to test this web service, we need to use either integration user or we need to use Santosh user. I just took some example. Okay, it's not mandatory to have the same names. Any questions as of now from anyone? Target server part is clear. Okay, now what I'm doing is I am virtualizing this service in my OSB service. I developed an OSB program to communicate with the target program. Three different ways I can communicate with the secured web service. Okay, if you see here, static service account, there are three different service account configurations. Static service account, pass-through service account, mapping service account. Static service account, pass-through service account, mapping service account. Three different ways we can do this configuration. Let me talk about one by one. Okay, so let me talk about static service account. In the static service account, what we need to do, you need to configure an OSB project which contains a proxy file and a pipeline file, regular web service, proxy file and a pipeline file, which internally communicates with a business service. This business service contains target web service, concrete visitor, correct? Target web service, concrete visitor. So this is the basic configuration. I mean, whenever you want to call any target web service, this is the configuration we do. We have a we have a proxy file, we have a pipeline file, we have a business service, correct? But this business service by default will not work because our target service is a secured web service. So what you need to provide in addition to the concrete visual, you also need to supply the username and password. You also need to supply the username and password to my target service. Okay, for that, what we do, we don't hard code username and password in the business service. Here, we don't hard code username and password. What we do, we will maintain a separate file called service account file. I will show you how to configure it. Okay, we will maintain it's completely a new file. A new file we will configure, and at the time of configuration, we will say it's a static service account. Here we will use the target service user, target service password. Is it clear? We hard code here target service user, target service password, and this static service account will link with the business service. We link it with the business service. Okay, then what happened? Now business service, while it is calling the target server, it also uses this static service account, and the username and password will be supplied to the target service account. Is it clear, sir? So target server username, target server password will be maintained in this static service account. In this case, you no need to enable security on your proxy service. So this proxy, this OSB web service, right? It is not really required. It's completely out of scope. I mean, whether you want to enable the OSB security, you don't want to enable the OSB security is completely your choice and your requirement. It has no dependency with the target service. Okay, is it clear? Please stop me if you have any questions. So this is how the static service account will be operated. But if you go through second one, pass-through service account. So pass-through service account, of course, this is an individual file. Service account is an individual file configuration, separate file we need to configure, and we need to link this service account file with the business service. Okay, but here the limitation is we have to maintain same user and the same password in target server and OSB server. Okay, suppose in target server I have integration user and its password. Same user and same password I have to maintain even in the OSB server. Is it clear? Same user and password. Okay, and how it will be operated. So in this case, guys, you want to use this pass-through service account. If you want to use this model, then what you need to do, you must enable security, basic security on your OSB project as well. You must enable OSB security on your OSB web service, OSB proxy file. Okay, must, it is must, it's not optional. Okay, and when the client is testing your OSB program, along with the input data, he also need to supply OSB user and OSB password, which must be same as target server user and target server password. What we are doing here is whatever the username and password provided by the client when testing the OSB program, the same user and password will be routed to target server as well. Same user and same password will be routed. I mean, you no need to hard code the user in your service account. In the previous approach, static service account, we hard coded the user, target server. See, read the instruction, hard code target server username and password. But in the second case, you no need to hard code any username and password. Okay, whatever the input username, whatever the input password provided by the client, of course, that must be enabled in OSB server. Okay, so whatever the user and password supplied by the client, same username and password will be routed to the target service. So in this approach, in this service account model, the limitation is we must maintain username and password, same username and password in target server and OSB server. Okay, suppose if the client supply integration user as username and respective password here, okay, integration user and in that respective password here, the same thing will be routed. Suppose let's say client is providing WebLogic is the username and password. WebLogic is the username and welcome one is the password. If the client provided in the input, then what happened? Your OSB program accepts the input and process that. When OSB program is trying to call the business service, so business service, the same user and password will go to the target service, right? Same user and password. So, but the target service, the target server don't know what is the WebLogic user. Okay, in that case, this communication will fail. So that is the limitation here. So you have to maintain same user password in both the servers, OSB server and target server. Okay, if you use integration user, OSB also maintaining integration user, target server also maintaining integration user, in that case your flow will return success. But suppose if the user is using WebLogic as the username, welcome one is the password, so target server don't know what is WebLogic because your target server contains only two users, integration user and Santosh user. They don't know what is WebLogic user. The WebLogic user will be sent to the request, but target server will reject the request because target server don't know what is WebLogic user. Is it clear, everyone? Okay, now the last approach, that is mapping service account. That means in this case, target server can have their own username, password. OSB server can have their own username and password. We can map the users here. Okay, suppose in the input, client provided OSB input, OSB username, let's assume WebLogic user, a WL admin user. We have a user called WL admin. Okay, and when it is calling the target server, in the service account, we prepare the mapping. If the request contains WL admin, convert the user as target server user. It can be anything. Your target server, any user you can use, either integration user or Santosh user. So this service account will take care about this mapping. Okay, so your input contains OSB user. When it is calling the business service, when it is calling the target server, we can replace the user and password. In this mapping service account file. Okay, so you don't need to expose the target server user to the client. So you can expose only OSB user to the client. Client will supply the OSB user. Internally, we replaced the OSB user with the target server user and send the request to the target server. That's what it is called as mapping service account. Any questions as of now? Any questions? Okay, so guys, I'm not going to configure all this code because we know how to configure a proxy file, pipeline file, business service file, everything we know. We saw these examples in the previous sessions, right? How to configure the routing, replace, how to configure the assign actions, service callout actions. We know all this stuff, okay? So in the entire project, what is new? The new thing is service account. Okay, so what I did is I already prepared this entire project I built and we imported it, right? Let me go back to my JDeveloper. So we just imported one test project, right? If you see here, I built the entire project. Let me open it. So this is also important, guys. Not just developing OSB code. It is also important. You need to learn. How to read code which is developed by somebody else. Okay, it's not just you develop the code. You will also need to know how to read the code which is already developed. So this code is already developed. Okay, so here let me show you simple thing. First, I want to show you how to build a service account. So it's very simple navigation. What you can do, go to this and service account. You can see there is an option called service account. Just select it. So give some name. I will say test service account. Finish. Okay. So here you have the options. You want to go as pass-through, static, mapping. Okay, which one you want to configure? Pass-through service account, static service account, and mapping service account. Okay, so what I did, let me delete this. Okay, now you can see under the service accounts folder, I configured three service accounts, static service account, See, as per the diagram, so this is the static service account, right? What we do, hard code target server username and password. So you need to see here, I configured target server username and password. Target server username and password. Welcome one. Once I don't know what is the password in the code, guys. I'm just resetting the password. Okay, my target server username, my target server password. Is it clear? Done. Same way, go through pass-through service account. In pass-through service account, you don't need to do any hard coding. You don't need to do any hard coding. What it will do, it will get the username and password from OSB input, route the same username and password to the target service. Okay. And then if you go to mapping service account, see, this is the mapping service account. So what I am doing is remote user. See, remote user means target server. Target server username and password you need to add here. Let me say my target server contains something called WLAdmin. Okay, and its password WLAdmin, and I need to configure the password something welcome one. Okay, this way you need to add a username, target server username and password. You can add more than one target server username and password. It's your choice. Okay, so what? Okay, simple, right? So you can add any number of users here. Now, this is the mapping. The bottom configuration is the mapping. See, WLAdmin is my OSB user, and this is the remote user. Here you can see the drop down list. So how many users you configure here? Suppose test user. This is my target test user, and I will give some password. Let's assume there are 2 users for my target server. Okay, now I want to map it. If I get WLAdmin as the OSB user, okay, how you want to convert? You want to convert it as integration user, or you want to convert it as test user? You have an option to choose. Okay, done. So anyway, I don't want the second user. Let me delete it. So I want, this is my target user, target server user. This is my OSB server user. Is it clear, guys? Any questions? Any questions? How to configure? It's very simple configuration. Create the service account file, select what resource type you want to configure. Okay, pass through static and mapping, and do the required configuration. Static, in static, you need to provide the target username and target password. In pass through, no need to configure any username, it's just a pass through. And then if you go to mapping, it's a mapping between OSB user and the target user. Any questions? Any questions from anyone? No? Right. So once we have this files ready, once these files are ready, what are okay, let me save everything. Yeah. So how to connect this service account and business service? It's very simple. Same business service configuration, no difference in that. But once your business service is ready, go to transport details tab. This is the business, your business service is a secured business service. Then what you need to do, go to transport details tab, and then authentication. Make sure you selected basic in your business service file. Make sure you selected the basic, and then you need to browse your service account file. Which service account file you want, you just browse it. Is it clear, sir? I have 3 service account files. Whichever I want to apply on this business service, I will browse that. Clear? Any questions? It's a simple configuration. In your existing business service, you need to browse your service account file to enable the target service. I mean, while you are calling the secured target service, it's a simple configuration to browse the service account. Okay, any question? So what I want you to do, you just go through this project. It's not developed by you. Okay, so it's developed by somebody else, developed in 11G and migrated to 12C. And now you open the proxy files, pipeline files, open them and see how the code configured. What is the code configured? Okay, there is nothing new except the business service service account file configuration. In your business service, if you go to transport details, you can see a service account, and authentication is basic. Okay, these 2 are new things. And how to configure service account, how to configure how to connect the service account file in your business service, I shown you. Clear? So just go through the code, try to understand, deploy it and test it. Okay, do it yourself, and come back with questions. So tomorrow I want to continue on the same topic, but what you need to do, I'm expecting you to deploy, test and come back. Is it clear? Okay, so you can simply deploy this code. Simply, I mean, what you need to do once you got this project, so go to your service account, go to service accounts, and set the passwords, guys. Set the usernames and passwords. So you must have these usernames and passwords in your server, right? So your whatever the password, wherever the password is there, the respective password you can configure. In the static service account file, you need to set the password as per your user. Okay, and also mapping service account also you need to set the password. Make sure you corrected the passwords, because the code was developed in 11G. There we may use a different password, and now we are using it in 12C. This is a different server, different passwords we use. So set the passwords first, and then deploy the code, and test each proxy file. Test each proxy file. Okay, total 3 proxy files we have. I have shown you, right? Test all 3 projects. First one, second one, third one. Test all 3 web services and let me know your experience and questions. Are you able to understand the code? You have any questions? You faced any trouble? You must come back with questions. Okay. So that's it for today from my side, guys. All this code is available in the shared folder. You can go through the shared folder. Everything is already imported into shared folder. You just need to download, including the image which we discussed. This is the guide. This is the guide for you. Go through this image and test all 3 web services and let me know whether you are able to test it or not. Okay. That's it, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. I will stop the recording.